Welcome back to the garage team. How's it going? How's it been? How you doing? Tell me everything. I hope you're doing fantastic as always. You know the drill. If that's the case, please pass that on. Help the next person feel just as good as you are. And if you're new around here, welcome. Welcome to my channel. This is my garage, and this is the car that I will be regaling you with today. Regaling you? Oh man, that's a big word. I think I used it correctly. In this video, I'm gonna be showing you how to change the CCV valve, that's the crankcase ventilation valve, or the intake rear cover. I don't know, it goes by so many names, but you know the one. Now let's do this. Tools you're gonna need for this job are as follows. You're gonna need a flathead screwdriver, a Torx 30 bit, and a 1/4 inch close-ended wrench, unless you can find something like this, which has got to be the world's most useful tool. It's a little ratchet that takes a bit right there. You put the bit on there. On the other side, it actually has a ratcheting element, whatever you want to call that. But it's basically a wrench that wants to be a ratchet that takes a bit. I have no idea what it's called. Something driver, possibly. 1/4 inch. You don't need this, but it helps tremendously. You can just use a close-ended wrench. If you're changing the CCV, you most likely have an oil leak somewhere, so make sure that you have a rag to wipe up any messes, and of course, gloves for your ladylike hands. You will also need the new CCV. I would suggest getting this straight from BMW, but hey, you do you. And the gasket, mine is coming from Victor Reigns. First things first, if you need to remove your vanity cover because your car still has that, then do so by pushing down on the 4 clips and then pulling up. Should be pretty self-explanatory, or check out some of my other videos where I show you how to do that. But we're gonna go straight into it. To begin here, there are 2 vacuum lines. They're held in by these yellow clips. I know, I love the color too. So you're gonna go ahead and grab your screwdriver, and you're just going to push the clips out that way. Now just remember, treat everything very nicely because it is, again, BMW plastic, and BMW plastic explodes for no reason. Pull the hose out. Just take the clip off from around the hose so that you don't lose it. If this is the first time you or any of the previous owners have done this job, you will need to remove this jet pump hose by cutting these clamps here. These are non-removable clamps. You have to cut them. There's one here and one here. This one has been done before by someone other than me, and they've used this clamp. So I already loosened this one, but I'm unable to get this hose off of this end. So I'm gonna use my cutters and cut this one so that I can take the hose off of this end, and then I'll remove the entire part with the hose still attached to it. And after I do that, I'll be able to get the rest of that hose off. So this hose refuses to budge. It is pretty solidly in there, so I'm gonna skip it for now. The next thing you're gonna need is your T30 bit, and there are 7 Torx screws that are gonna be behind here. So go ahead and find them and start working on them one by one. Now be really careful when you're taking these off. If they're on there really tight, just be aware that you can strip that really easy, and then you're gonna have a really tough time getting them off. So that's the name of the game here. Make sure that your bit is all the way in there, and make sure that you're not going to strip them out. So most recently I ended up tearing this one completely out of there without being able to take the part off yet, because, and also the gloves came off, so you know I'm serious now, because this was completely in my way. I wasn't able to take it off from here, so I had to take it off and it wasn't able to come off from here, so I had to literally rip it off. Now, I want to be very, very clear. This is how the part goes, like this, right? So the one that I tore off right here is this one. I was finally able to get this hose off of here, but not without it ripping, so this hose is done. Now with this out of the way, sort of, I should be able to get to them a little bit easier. Oh, there's one. Oh. And again, I don't know why they are that tight. A little more challenging than I thought it would be, simply because I can't reach. That's the thing about being short. My feet are pretty much off the ground right now. So here's what's going on so far. I'm gonna show you on the brand new part here. So I have every single torque screw out except for these two. These two are definitely gonna be the toughest ones to get out because they're at the very bottom and I can barely reach them. So let's start with this one. This one right here, unfortunately, is halfway stripped. I know I said to be really careful, and even I, when I'm trying to be extra careful, I was able to strip it about 50%, I would say. So it still has a little bit of bite, but it's not enough. So what I was thinking is, I was gonna grab my bit, and I was literally going to JB weld the Torx bit to it. Leave it about 12 hours, and if it sets properly, I should be able to crank it loose, and then break it off, and I should be okay. That's kind of the plan right now. So once I get that one out, I will celebrate. This one right here, I haven't even started on because there is a coolant hose that runs right here and it prevents me from really getting any tool or even my fingers in there. So I'm gonna have to remove that coolant hose. I have a catch can already under the car, just in case I lose a little bit of coolant, should be okay. I'm gonna remove that coolant hose so I can get to this one before I even strip it like I did with this one. Let me show you where that coolant hose is. All right, so here we are at the back of the engine. As you can tell, there's one coolant hose there and one coolant hose here. There we go. So it's gonna be this one right here that I need to take off to be able to access that bolt. Right now, I can't even laugh. I can't even laugh. I am in the most awkward position. My entire hand is starting to cramp and cry, of course, but of course, mind over body. Mind over body always. And, you know, I could see this as a loss, as negativity, but I choose positivity because it makes me feel good. Well, it's been about 24 hours, and that should be plenty of time for the JB weld to dry. Okay. All right, I don't know. Maybe. Maybe if I crank it like this. Okay. Come on, baby. Give me something, please. Let's make this happen. Don't do that. Don't do that. Should I just crank it with my hand here? Nope. With that warning out of the way, let me talk you through what I'm going to do. I'm gonna take the caveman way, and I'm actually going to try to hit the CCV and crack some of the plastic off it, break it basically into pieces so that I can actually get to the Torx that's stripped and grab it with either vice grips or with pliers. If I crack my manifold, I'm okay with that. I'm gonna have to buy a new one. That's fine, it's not the end of the world. I can always fix this car. Hey, it might just work, so I'm just gonna give it a shot. Again, if you're offended by this, then please feel free to click out of the video right now. No harm done, I get it, this is not for everyone, but I'm gonna try it, so let's see what happens. To give you a better representation of what I'm attempting to do here, I'm gonna show you on the new CCV. So right here is the one that I stripped out that I can get. That's the last one. All of the other ones are already taken out. So I'm going to actually hit the CCV right here, try to break some of this plastic off, probably break the cap off to get it out of the way. And then with this gone, hopefully I'll be able to, from up here, grab this one with some, I don't know, some vice grips, or I have my vice grips right here. I have some pliers right there. But I'm just gonna go caveman and kind of like break this nipple off, break this off. Of course, I'm gonna be hitting it with the chisel and the hammer. Just hard enough for it to crack. I mean, it is plastic and it is old, so I'm sure it won't be too difficult. I will be installing hand tight some of these back on there, just so that the entire brunt of this doesn't go on this thread and maybe bend something. I don't know. I think that it makes common sense. It makes sense if I put some of those back on there so that I have a more sturdy piece to work with instead of this thing just kind of like wobbling on that one that's still on here. Hand tightening the Torx just enough. That's gone. At this point, I've gone Hannibal Lecter on this diaphragm. So this is a piece of the old one that I ended up breaking from the back. This is part of the diaphragm. I have a collection of the plastic bits and pieces. Like I said, I just went to town with the hammer. I'll see if I can show you some of this. My big old DSLR here won't be able to fit in between that. I just can't get the camera in there. So I'm gonna shoot with my cell phone right now, and hopefully you'll be able to understand better what I'm doing. Like I said, not for everyone, but I think it's working out. So check it out. As you can tell, the parts of the plastic are broken in there. So let's go in a little bit deeper here and see if you can actually see all of the carnage that is down there. And I mean, there is definitely a lot that I had to chip away at with the chisel and the hammer and just break off all of those parts. So now that I have a little bit more access to that bolt, I'll be able to get the vice grips in there and crank away. I hope you guys don't judge too harshly, but this is working out for me so far. And dare I say, it's kind of fun because I've never broken anything on purpose. After many, many hours and many, many shirts, I'm happy to report that I got it. And that's the thing about life. You know, you can't just think you can't do something. Yeah, it was dumb. Maybe it was time consuming. Maybe I would have already been done if I had just taken off the entire intake manifold. But the belief in myself that I was going to be able to get this, even if everyone else told me it was impossible, that's what you have to grasp on. Don't ever put limiting beliefs in your mind, but be okay with the circumstances, no matter how they fold out. And I'm glad to say that it worked. I'm gonna frame this one. Now take a look at your new CCV. On this side, you have an O-ring and you're gonna have an opening. Now there is a hose or a tube coming from inside of your intake manifold that goes over this. Let me show you on the car real quick where that is. When you're ready to remove the old CCV and you're unseating it from the intake manifold, what you want to do is you want to pay attention to this tube. You want to make sure that you have a screwdriver, and you basically want to push this tube back. Push it back this way, back into the intake manifold as you remove the CCV out that way. If you pull this tube with the CCV, because there's a little O-ring here, remember. So if you pull the CCV out and this tube comes out, it'll become unseated from the other end, which you cannot access unless you remove the intake manifold. There is one of those here. There's gonna be another one the exact same way in here. There's another tube. So you kind of have to have patience and take it off very slowly. Don't just pop this thing off. Make sure that you get a screwdriver and you push the tube in here out, as well as this one right here. If either of those come undone, intake manifold has to be removed. Here we have the old CCV and that's the new one. From this end, they both look apparently the same, but it's gonna be when I flip it around that you'll see the carnage in all its glory. So basically I ended up having to remove this, like forcefully just pull it out. I had to crack this with the chisel. Definitely crack most of this so that I could get the vice grips in here. And also all these little nipples, like there's one here, there's one here, all of those had to be cracked off. Pro tip. Before replacing the part, I'm putting it all back together. Instead of using the old Torx 30 that were on there from the factory, save yourself the trouble. These are the reason why I had to go medieval on the back of that engine. So just go ahead and chuck these and instead get yourself 7 of hex head bolts. Regular, good old hex heads that you probably already have the tools for. So just in case you ever have to do this job again, you won't have to eat large quantities of poo like I just did. I would suggest installing your new part here with the hose already installed here and this clamp secure. Be aware of the hose or the tube that goes here and the tube that goes here. Make sure you line them up properly. Don't rush through this, take your time and make sure that everything is seated properly before you grab your hex head bolts and put them in through here. Hopefully you took my advice and you're switching over to hex heads. If that's the case, all you need is most likely a 10mm wrench or a ratchet if you can fit it in there. And then yeah, go ahead and put this on. I don't have torque specs, but I would assume not too tight. By God, definitely not as tight as some people seem to put this on there. Even if you took my advice and went with a hex head set of bolts instead of the old Torx, you may still find it difficult to tighten the very last bolt at the bottom of the CCV. Yes, the same one that I ended up stripping out. Now, I found that most of my sockets and ratchet combos were just too big and I couldn't get any leverage over that bolt. So instead, try this. Find yourself a 1/4 inch drive 10mm thin walled socket. Get a 6mm hex head or Allen key. And with this little combo here, you should be able to clear most of the obstacles that are in your way when you're trying to tighten that last bolt. Thank you so much for staying till the very end of the video. If you learned something from it, please give it a like, give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend. I don't know, consider subscribing. But until next time, I will see you on the next video. Be good to each other.